Hello, little Vickies. Welcome back to my channel. Tonight, I'll be sharing 9 Glitch in the Matrix stories with some extras from the comments. If you like what you hear, please subscribe if you haven't already, and hit the like button as it's incredibly helpful to my growth here on YouTube. If you have a story of your own you'd like to share, please send it to me at veronica45stories@gmail.com. Link is also in the description. If you have a suggestion or just want to say hello, please leave a comment. I always reply. Thanks so much for being here. Now it's time to relax and get on with the stories. I live in a very small town. We have a small grocery store, hardware store, you know the drill. I was done getting groceries and hopped in my car to head home. As I pulled up to the end of the driveway of the store, blinker on to get onto the main road, I see a big, white, lifted Chevy pickup driving toward me that I need to wait for. I watch it as it drives closer to me, remarking to myself that it looks so similar to my husband's, just older and rusted around the edges. It even has the same black emblem and large iron cross bumper. As the truck goes past me, my jaw nearly fell open. Staring at me intently was a man almost identical to my husband, but with a longer, graying beard and gray hair around the ears. I quickly gathered myself together and pulled out behind the truck and up to the stop sign that followed. He was staring at me still in his side mirror, glancing away and then staring at me again. He took off like a shot the first chance he got, and I tried to follow to see which direction he took, but a car was coming and I couldn't get out behind him in time. The truck sped off toward my road, but I don't know if he turned in that direction or not. I know that's a little crazy, but I couldn't help feeling the total connection I feel with my husband when I saw his reflection in that side mirror staring at me. It gives me goosebumps to think about it because it was like he knew that I was me and I was the wrong age and that he needed to get out of there before I could follow. I got home and my husband was there working in his wood shop. I told him about it and he chuckled and asked if he looked hot when he was old. I mean, he did, if it was really him. So when I was around 1 year old, I was with my parents in the supermarket when an old man approached me, as old people do with babies, and insisted to my parents that I take his coin. My parents describe how calming and familiar the man was. I like to think it's me from the future, but that's maybe reaching a bit. So fast forward to me now, almost turning 22. I've had this coin with me the whole time. A couple years ago, I bought a safe and thought it would be a good idea to keep it in there. After about a month, I go back to the safe, and the coin just isn't there. I had it in a little plastic case designed for cool coins. The case was there, the coin wasn't. I'm the only person that can get into that safe, and the only person who's even been near it. So, for 2 whole years, that coin is just lost, and I was devastated. Now, here's the weird part. I'm up in the loft of my parents' house, where I grew up, organizing some boxes and stuff, when something falls from the ceiling and hits me on the shoulder. And what do you know? The damn coin is sat at my feet just staring at me. Never been so confused in my life. I never moved the coin. I hadn't been to my parents' house in forever. There's no ledge on the ceiling or anything where the coin could have fallen from. It just materialized from thin air. Anyway, that's my weird story. Makes me think that coin just isn't part of this reality. Edit. Thank you all for the comments and upvotes on this post. There has been some great insight. I'll have a photo of the coin linked here tomorrow for those that want to see. And for anyone that hasn't seen my previous comment, the coin is a UK pre-decimal 1967 1D. They went out of circulation in 1970, I believe, and the new 1p was introduced. I had a boss I worked with that something of this nature happened to him at work for about a half hour, and I told him it was dimensional shift. It periodically happens to me for brief moments, but his was a long time. And I watched my boss the whole time. He was standing outside my office window smoking. Usually he'd dart out, smoke, and come back, but he stood out there for a half hour. So when he comes back in the office, he asks me, "Did the driver of the rent-a-truck leave an invoice with you?" "No, there was no driver, no rent-a-truck. He hasn't been here. No one has been here." So my boss says, "I just spent an hour unloading that truck with the driver. He said he'd bring the invoice in to you." "No, you weren't. You were outside smoking." At this point, he thinks I'm trying to make him crazy, and I think he's trying to make me crazy. So a few other people wandered in and told him, "You've been outside smoking for a half an hour." He checks his cigarette pack and only one is missing, yet he smoked continuously for a half hour straight. No cigarette lasts that long. He then started feeling very weird, like he had déjà vu. After a few days, he tells me, "Okay, that's happened to me before." I know it has. I thought it was dreams or déjà vu or falling asleep, but it has happened to me before. I've never used Reddit before, but a friend of mine was talking to me about the glitch in the Matrix subreddit, so I decided to share my story here since I don't have any explanation for it almost 3 years later. Rewind back to September 2015. I was a freshman who had just entered high school 2 weeks prior. Already school was weighing down on me, and I'd been continuing a habit I had of going on walks to clear my mind. On this day, I'd been walking around a pond near my house. There's a trail that goes around the pond, and then the trail leads up to a set of abandoned train tracks on the other side, which sit about 15 feet above the path and pond below. After walking the circle, I was crossing the train tracks when I decided I wanted some ice cream. The fastest way to get to the ice cream shop was to take the path below the train tracks, but there isn't any way to cross the pond without going all the way back around, and being 14 years old, I decided that I could just jump from the tracks onto the path below and keep walking. Looking down from above, it didn't seem to be that far of a jump, so that's what I did. The next thing I remember after that was being half-conscious in an ambulance. Everything was extremely blurry, and the paramedics sounded slightly panicked. I wasn't able to move either of my legs, so I think they were both broken. This scene continued on for a few minutes until we arrived at the hospital, and I was wheeled into the emergency room on a stretcher. I only had a few minutes in emergency before I eventually lost all consciousness, and that was the last thing I saw. After I'd been unconscious for what felt like about an hour, I opened my eyes and I was on the ground. I'd just hit the ground after jumping, but this time I was fully conscious. I hadn't noticed this before I jumped, but there had been a car parked watching me. I think they thought I was attempting suicide, but it probably looked that way. And the people in it had jumped out and called an ambulance for me. The ambulance ride had been the exact same as it was the first time, and I was put into the same emergency room that I had died in before. The only difference between the two events were that I was fully conscious this time, and my injuries were much more minor. I was discharged from the hospital the same night with only stitches in my lip, a slightly fractured jaw, and mild concussion. For a while after this, I assumed that the first scenario had just been a weirdly coincidental dream that I'd had while I was unconscious, so I didn't consider it anything abnormal. It wasn't until a few weeks after, when my mom told me that the people who had helped me said that I had been conscious the entire time. I hadn't been knocked out after hitting the ground or anything. So that entire scenario managed to happen in the few seconds it took me to hit the ground while I was still conscious. Anyways, I'm not very good at describing things, especially with how blurry this day was now that it was years ago, but I'm 17 now, and I still have no way to explain what happened that day other than I died and was given a second chance. Okay, so major weird event. I've been living in my current place for less than 2 years now. It's a rented room in a shares flat. I only share it with another guy, a friend of mine, and used to share it until 2 weeks ago with his cat as well, who sadly passed away. The thing is, the light switch for my room was located outside my room next to the door. I remember telling my friend about how annoying it was and how it was weird that there was not another inside the room, like, okay, one outside is acceptable only if you put another inside, but the bathroom and the kitchen work the same way, just light switches outside those rooms, none to be found inside. So as uncomfortable as it felt, it wasn't the only room working like that in the flat. I specifically had to add a couple of lamps inside my room in case I wanted to have light without opening the door, just in case I wanted privacy. So guess who's inside my fucking room looking at me like as if I was an absolute imbecile? Yes, that's right. The light switch. And there is not an extra one, too. The one outside my room next to the door has completely vanished. It's as if it just moved inside. I'm here, sitting dumbfounded, starting to doubt my sanity. What if I've been hallucinating for almost 2 years? But it cannot be, because I remember talking explicitly about this with my friend more than once, and establishing the whole two lamps business because of it. I have no words. Something feels terribly off. Like it didn't frighten me or leave me extremely distraught, but there's just this feeling of low blood pressure, but like in the general feeling of everything around my house right now. I've been checking all the switches and have left and entered the place a couple of times as well. Maybe somehow I've been mistaken all this time, but that just sounds more crazy in my opinion than a glitch. Would love to know what the fuck you think about this. I live in a small town in Turkey. I have a racing bike with custom paint, blue, yellow, white, red, black. So in the town I live, there are a maximum of 3 racing bikes in total, and none of them is the same brand as mine. We all know each other, and mine is custom painted. Please remember that. Then one day, last summer, I wanted to drive my racing bike, and my wife insisted on joining with me. When she is on the bike with me, I cannot go as fast as usual because, I don't want to be the reason for any injury or something. So I rejected her, and we even had a little fight about that. Long story short, I drove my bike alone for 45 minutes or so and turned back to my home. I was nearly 5 minutes away from my home. On the opposite direction from the headlights, I see that this is the same bike as mine. As we come closer, I saw that we have exactly the same custom paint. The driver was looking at my bike, and I was looking at his bike, and we really slowed down for this. And he had a passenger on the back, a woman, who has the exact same helmet as my wife. The road is divided with barriers in the middle, so we couldn't stop and meet, but we were really confused and slowed down together. I'm pretty sure it was me in a parallel universe who accepted my wife's request. Comment. In 1997, I came out of my house and started walking towards the corner of the road that leads to the store. As I rounded it, 2 friends that were coming the opposite way started freaking out, screaming, and looking at me like they had seen a ghost. I calmed them and asked them what's wrong. They had just been talking to me as I was buying bits in the store they had come from. I raced to the store, and the corner store owner confirmed 5 minutes ago I left after buying a Mars bar and a Coke. Ironically, I was going to buy exactly that, but it put me off as I was so freaked out. I never forgot that. I was in my room and had just woken up, so I'm completely sober and aware of everything. I already spent time in bed waking up, so I was just ready to start my day. I got up to go and get ready and just heard a random female voice say, "Why are we here?" It was very loud, and it just disappeared, like it wasn't even like if someone said it, because I looked around and saw no one, and it wasn't a car driving away because I didn't hear it get quieter, it just stopped. No one else seemed to have heard it, and very rarely is anyone or anything that loud in my room. It was like if they were in the room with me and realized they said it too loud and stopped talking. I also have no history of schizophrenia and have never heard voices or seen things. It was just a random Truman Show moment. Comments. I remember another story about a guy who watched TV, then heard a voice from behind him saying, "Come and see this." When the guy turned around, he didn't see anyone but heard another voice say, "Shit, he heard us." He got really scared, obviously, but couldn't find any explanation. Never heard them again. This is scary because it implies there are beings or other humans who can watch us without being seen. That reminds me of another story I heard today. The person in the story said when they were a kid, they would keep the TV on while going to sleep as a nightlight, and one night they heard, "Is he asleep? I don't know," and saw the two news reporters staring directly at them from the TV. A few seconds later, they broke eye contact and went on with their news story. Hello again, little Vickies. Thanks so much for listening. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't already, hit the thumbs up button, and leave a comment, as it's all very helpful to my growth here on YouTube. Remember, if you have a story of your own you'd like to share and possibly have read on the channel, send it to the email in the description below. I appreciate you being here more than I can say. And until next time, be good.